There is a particular kind of quiet panic that comes after the storm. You did the brave work. You faced the fear. You began to say no. You started to reclaim your own space. And for a while, there was a sense of relief, of freedom. But now, a new, more subtle feeling has crept in. A kind of hollowness, a disorientation. The goals that once pulled you forward, a promotion, the approval of others, the perfectly managed home, have lost their magnetic pull. The map you used to navigate your life now feels like a foreign language. And in its place, there is just space, a vast, quiet, unnerving emptiness. You may be asking yourself, did I make a mistake? Have I lost my way? You feel adrift, without an anchor, without a clear direction. I am here to tell you that what you are feeling is not a sign that your healing has failed. It is the undeniable proof that it is working. You are not lost. You are in a sacred liminal space, the space between worlds. The great depth psychologist Carl Jung had a deep understanding of this phase. He knew that the dissolution of our old, ego-driven goals was not an end, but a profound beginning. It is the clearing of the stage so that a new actor, a new director, can emerge from the wings. This is not a void to be feared or quickly filled. It is a holy ground. It is the fertile darkness where your soul's true compass begins to calibrate. This is a critical and often misunderstood part of the shadow work journey. Today, we will learn to stand in this emptiness without panic. We will learn to listen to its silence. Because within this feeling of being lost is the very first clue to finding your way home.
Let's begin by dismantling a myth. The myth that a successful life is a straight line, a constant upward climb of achieving one goal after another. We are taught this from a young age. Good grades, the right college, the perfect job, the promotion, the bigger house. Our lives become a checklist, and our motivation is the fuel we use to tick off the boxes. This entire system of operating is governed by one part of our psyche, the part we know best. It's called the ego. The ego is our conscious sense of self. It's the CEO of our personality. It loves order, control, and most of all, external validation. It builds our identity based on what the outside world reflects back to us. Am I successful? Am I respected? Am I a good person? The ego looks for answers in titles, in bank accounts, in the approval of others. For the people pleaser, the good person, the ego has a very specific and demanding agenda. Its primary goal is to maintain connection and avoid abandonment at all costs. So it sets goals that serve this purpose. Be indispensable at work. Be the most supportive friend. Be the perfect parent or partner. Every yes you say when you mean no, every time you put someone else's needs before your own, you are feeding your ego. You are giving it the validation it craves. You are proving to it that you are good and therefore safe. And for a long time, this system works. It gives you a sense of purpose, a direction, a map. But then you begin to do the deeper work. You start your shadow work. You begin to listen to the whispers of the parts of you that have been exiled. The anger, the needs, the desires. You start to set small boundaries. You start to reclaim your energy. And in doing so, you unknowingly begin to starve your ego. Every time you choose to rest instead of overworking, you are taking away the ego's proof of your productivity. Every time you say a gentle no, you are denying the ego the hit of validation it gets from being a helper. Every time you honor an authentic need, you are telling the ego that your worth is, in fact, not dependent on the approval of others. The ego, which has been the sole ruler of your kingdom for so long, suddenly finds its food supply cut off. Its power base is eroding. And like any dethroned monarch, it panics. It loses its sense of purpose. This is the root of your lost motivation. Your lack of drive is not a personal failing. It is a psychological event. It is the dissolution of the ego-driven goal system. Think of it like this. For years, you have been navigating with a compass that only pointed to external markers of success. Get that promotion, make everyone happy, avoid conflict. Now, through your inner work, you have demagnetized that compass. The needle no longer points to those things. It just spins. And you are left in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight, feeling completely and utterly lost. This phase is what Carl Jung might refer to as a psychological naikia, a journey into the underworld. It is a descent. It feels like a regression. You may feel more confused, more apathetic, and more directionless than you did before you even started this work. You might look back at your old life, the life of a people pleaser, and while it was exhausting, at least you knew what to do. At least you had a purpose, even if it was a false one. The temptation to go back can be immense. The temptation to find a new, shiny goal to quickly fill the emptiness is powerful. Maybe I'll run a marathon. Maybe I'll start a new business. We try to slap a new destination onto the old broken compass, hoping it will give us direction again. But the soul, in its profound wisdom, resists. This emptiness you feel is not a mistake. It is a necessary clearing. It is your psyche's way of creating a vacuum, a sacred pause. It is intentionally holding you in this state of not knowing for a very important reason. It is preventing you from simply recreating your old life with a new set of ego-driven goals. It is forcing you to stop looking for a map and to start listening for a new kind of guidance. Because in the Jungian model, the ego is not the true center of the psyche. The true center, the wise, whole, authentic core of our being, is what Jung called the self. The ego is the CEO, but the self is the wise, silent chairman of the board. And this entire process, this shadow work, this descent, this feeling of being lost, is a profound transfer of power. It is the ego finally learning to step down from the throne so that the guidance of the self can begin to be heard. The self does not speak in the language of checklists and 5-year plans. It does not care about promotions or the approval of others. It speaks in whispers, in symbols, in feelings of quiet resonance, in pulls of gentle curiosity. It is the inner compass. But in order for you to hear it, the noisy shouting of the ego and its goals must first fall silent. And that silence feels like being lost. It feels like emptiness. It feels like you are adrift, but you are not adrift in an empty ocean. You are floating in a womb of possibility, waiting for a new birth.
Floating in a womb of possibility. This is a beautiful, poetic idea, but when you were living it, when you were in the thick of that emptiness, it rarely feels beautiful. It feels terrifying. Our modern world has no tolerance for emptiness. It has no reverence for the fallow season. We are taught to fear the void. The moment we feel a space open up in our lives, our immediate instinct is to fill it with distraction, with noise, with a new project, with another person, anything to avoid the discomfort of simply being. And so, the greatest challenge in this phase of your journey is not to find the next goal. It is to learn the lost art of sacred stillness. It is to resist the frantic urge to fill the space and to instead have the courage to sit in it, to allow the emptiness to be. Let me share a story about a man named David, a 48-year-old marketing executive. For 25 years, David's life was defined by the climb. He was brilliant at it. He had the corner office, the impressive title, the life his parents had always dreamed for him. But the shadow work he had been doing, the work of facing his own unlived creative life, had dismantled that entire structure. He quit his job, feeling a pull towards something more authentic, but having no idea what that something was. And he fell into the void. For the first few weeks, he panicked. He spent hours on job sites looking for another executive role. He drafted business plans for companies he had no passion for. He filled his days with busy work, trying to recreate the feeling of productivity that had defined him for so long. He was trying to fill the emptiness, but every action felt hollow. Every new goal felt like a lie. His soul, which had orchestrated this entire great resignation, was simply not on board. It refused to supply the energy. Finally, exhausted from the struggle, David surrendered. He stopped trying to fill the void. He just stopped. He would sit in his backyard for hours watching the clouds. He read novels, not business books. He listened to music from his youth. He did nothing that could be considered productive. And it was excruciating. His ego screamed at him. It called him a failure, a loser, lazy. The anxiety was immense. He was terrified that if he stayed in this space for too long, he would lose his edge, be forgotten, and never find his way back. This terror is the guardian at the gate of this sacred space. What David was doing, unconsciously at first, was the most important work of this entire phase. He was learning to tolerate the void. He was developing what the poet John Keats called negative capability, the ability to exist in uncertainties, mysteries, and doubts without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. In the Jungian sense, he was allowing the ego to fully die without immediately trying to resurrect it in a new form. This is a crucial point. Most of us, when our old ego dissolves, immediately try to construct a new ego, a spiritual ego. We trade our corporate goals for spiritual goals. I will meditate for 2 hours a day. I will become a yoga teacher. I will read every book on psychology. These are not inherently bad things, but if they come from a place of panic, from a need to fill the void and create a new identity, they are just another trick of the ego to maintain control. It's the same game, just on a different playing field. The true work, the work that leads to the activation of the inner compass, is to do nothing. It is to trust the fallow period. Think of a farmer's field. After a harvest, The farmer lets the field lie fallow. He does not immediately plant new seeds. The field needs time to rest, to recover its nutrients, to be replenished by the rain and the sun. It looks empty. It looks unproductive. But it is in this very emptiness that the potential for the next, healthier harvest is being created. Your psyche is that field. The emptiness you feel is not a sign of barrenness. It is a sign of fertility. It is your soul preparing the soil for what is to come. So how do you practice this? How do you consciously embrace this sacred pause? You start by shifting your intention for your day. Your goal is no longer to be productive. Your goal is to be present. When you wake up, instead of reaching for your phone to check emails, lie in bed for 5 more minutes. Just feel the sheets. Listen to the sounds outside. Be in your body. Throughout the day, practice aimless wandering. Go for a walk without a destination. Drive down a road you've never been on. Visit a section of the bookstore you never look at. Your only goal is to follow what feels mildly interesting, even for a moment. And most importantly, you create pockets of pure, unapologetic, unproductive time. Time where you are not trying to fix, improve, or achieve anything. You are simply allowing yourself to be. This is an act of profound trust. Trust in a process you cannot see. Trust that this disorientation is not a sign that you are lost, but a sign that your inner guidance system is recalibrating. Jung believed that the greatest wisdom emerges from this descent into the underworld. It is in the darkness of the underworld, in the belly of the whale, that the hero finds the treasure. The treasure, in this case, is not a new bowl. It is not a new identity. The treasure is the quiet, unshakable connection to your own self, the true center, the inner compass. And you cannot find it by searching for it. You can only find it by getting quiet enough to hear its first, faint whisper.
Getting quiet enough to hear the first, faint whisper. This is the new work. It is a work of subtlety, of nuance, of profound self-attunement. We are shifting from a mode of doing to a mode of being, from searching to sensing. And I understand that this can feel abstract, unsettling. So let's make it concrete. What does it actually mean to listen for your inner compass? What are you listening for? First, you must understand the language of the self. The self, the true center that Carl Jung spoke of, does not communicate through logic, spreadsheets, or well-reasoned arguments. That is the language of the ego. The language of the self is the language of the body, the language of emotion, the language of intuition and quiet resonance. It speaks through a sudden, unprompted feeling of curiosity about a random topic. It speaks through a song on the radio that makes your heart feel a little lighter. It speaks through the feeling of peace you get when you walk by a certain park. It speaks through a deep, quiet yes you feel in your bones, or a subtle no that feels like a closing off in your chest. These are not grand revelations. They are tiny, energetic breadcrumbs. They are the first faint signals from your soul's GPS, which is slowly coming back online. For most of your life, you have been taught to ignore these signals. The ego dismisses them as illogical, inefficient, or irrelevant to its goals. Why would I read a book about ancient pottery? It won't get me a promotion. Why would I spend an hour just sitting by the river? It's not productive. The practice of activating your inner compass is the practice of consciously choosing to honor these small, seemingly random pulls. It is the practice of trusting these subtle energetic shifts even when your rational mind cannot make sense of them. So here is a practical exercise for you, a gentle piece of shadow work you can begin this week. For the next 7 days, I want you to let go of the need to find your life's purpose or your next big thing. Instead, carry one simple question with you throughout your day. The question is, what gives me a spark of life right now? A spark of life is not a roaring fire of passion, not yet. It is a flicker, a tiny ember, a moment of slightly elevated energy. As you go about your day, become a detective of these sparks. Maybe you walk past a bakery and the smell of bread gives you a tiny spark of pleasure. Don't just walk by. Pause. Take it in. Maybe even buy the loaf of bread. Maybe you are scrolling through a streaming service and the poster for a documentary about deep-sea life catches your eye for a split second. A spark. Don't dismiss it. Add it to your watch list. Maybe a friend mentions they are taking a pottery class and you feel a tiny, illogical pull of interest. A spark. Don't analyze it. Simply notice it. Ah, there's a spark. Your only job is to notice these sparks, and whenever possible, to move towards them for a moment, to give them a little bit of oxygen. You are not trying to figure out what it means. You are not trying to turn it into a new career. You are simply practicing the act of listening to a different radio frequency, the frequency of your soul. What you are doing is creating a new feedback loop with your inner self. Every time you honor a spark, you are sending a message to your psyche, I'm listening, I trust you. Keep sending the signals. And as you practice this, something miraculous starts to happen. The whispers get a little louder, the sparks get a little brighter. A single spark of interest in pottery might lead you to a local studio where you meet someone who tells you about a book which leads you to a new idea that truly excites you. You begin to see a pattern emerge, a golden thread. You are not figuring out the path forward. You are allowing the path to reveal itself to you one breadcrumb at a time. This is what Jung meant by the process of individuation. It is not a process of the ego forcing its will upon the world. It is a process of the ego learning to listen to and serve the deeper wisdom of the self. The ego becomes the ship, and the self becomes the captain, navigating by the stars, not by a man-made map. This journey requires patience. It requires a radical trust in the unknown. There will be days, even weeks, where you feel no sparks at all, where the silence feels empty again. And that is okay. That is part of the process. In those moments, your only work is to return to the practice of simply being, of tending to the fallow field. Because what you are building is not a new set of goals. You are building a relationship, a deep, intimate, and unshakable relationship with the wisest, most loving, and most authentic part of you. You are learning to trust your inner compass again. And when that relationship is your foundation, you will never truly be lost again. You may be in between destinations, you may be in the dark, but you will always, always know the way home.
So, this is the great secret of the pathless path. The way forward is not found by looking further ahead, but by listening more deeply to where you are right now. We began this journey feeling lost and adrift, a terrifying state in a world that demands direction. We learned that this feeling is not a failure, but a sacred and necessary dissolving of the old ego-driven compass. It is the fallow season of the soul. We then discovered that in this quiet, empty space, a new guidance system is waiting to come online. Not a loud, demanding voice, but the quiet, intuitive whispers of the self, speaking the language of resonance and sparks of life. The path of shadow work in this phase is the path of learning to trust these whispers. This is a radical act of faith in a process larger than your conscious mind. It is a surrender of the need to know, and an embrace of the wisdom of being. It is, as Carl Jung understood, the true beginning of the journey toward wholeness. As you begin to follow these sparks, to trust this inner compass, your life will start to shift. Not in a dramatic overnight transformation, but in a series of small, authentic choices that align more and more with your true nature. You will find yourself drawn to new interests, new people, new ways of being that you could never have planned with your rational mind. But this new path can bring with it a new kind of challenge. As you start to live more authentically, guided by your own inner truth, you may begin to feel a growing distance from the world you once knew. The conversations that once interested you may now feel draining. The relationships that were built on your old people-pleasing persona may start to feel strained. You are no longer speaking the same language as everyone else. And this can lead to a profound and painful sense of loneliness. A feeling that you are walking this new, strange, and beautiful path all by yourself. How do you navigate this sacred loneliness? How do you stay true to your path when it feels like no one else understands? This is the next vital threshold of your shadow work journey, and it is exactly what we will be exploring together in our next video. I invite you to subscribe so you don't miss that crucial conversation. For today, your work is simple. It is to practice listening. I invite you to share in the comments below if you feel called to. Not your grand purpose, but just one small spark you noticed this week. A song, a smell, a random thought. By sharing, we create a collective map of these breadcrumbs, reminding each other that the guidance is always there, even when it's quiet. This is a safe space for your small discoveries. Let go of the need for a 5-year plan. Let go of the need to have it all figured out. For today, just find one spark and trust that it is enough to light the way for the very next step.